the first half of the Sikha over here that speaks about both the reward of the mitzvahs and specifically its connection with Mashiach's times. But Chilas Parshas Eikev Nemar, the beginning of Parshas Eikev, it says, V'hoya Eikev Tishmun Gomer, it will be when you will listen. V'shamar Hashem Elokech L'cha Sabris, Hashem will guard and observe the covenant, the promise He made. V'ahevcha V'racha, He will love you and He will give you brachas. Haschar al kiyum ha'torah ha'mitzvos k'mefurat b'hamshcha parsha. It speaks about the reward for fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs as it is afterwards detailed in the continuation of the parsha. Inyan zeh, schar ha'mitzvos, merumas gam b'mila Eikev, shem kol parsha. This idea, the reward of the mitzvahs, is also hinted in the word Eikev. That's the name of the entire parsha. Because really it's a strange word. True, we translate the word Eikev as meaning since, or when you will listen, since you will listen. And that's the simple meaning of it, but there's many different, more common words that could have been used. So one of the explanations of the word Eikev is the koyal schar mitzvahs shemekablim ba'achris hayomim the Moshiach Moshiach. Achris is Eikev. It's referring to the reward of the mitzvahs that we will be receiving at the end of the days, of the final days, the days of Moshiach. That's why it's called Eikev. Eikev is like the end, the lowest part of the body. So we're finally going to reach the end of time, the end of the days. That's called Eikev. So that's what it's referring to. After concluding the service of what we need to do today, like it's brought down the Medrash, so Hashem told them, Schari, its reward, Schar ha-mitzvahs be'akev, b'seif la'asad, the reward of the mitzvahs at the heel, meaning at the end, in the future time. And that's when I'm going to give you the reward of the mitzvahs. Shenemar, as it says, V'haya Eikev Tishmun, that will be when it will be the Eikev, that's when you'll have the reward for the Tishmun, when will come the heel, the end of times, that's when you'll have the reward for the Tishmun. That's one meaning in the word Eikev, one hint in the word Eikev. B'teves Eikev yeshne pirush noisav. In the word Eikev, there's another explanation, another hint. The koyal mitzvahs, it's referring not to the reward, but it's referring to the mitzvahs themselves. Ha-mitzvahs kalus she'odam dosh ba'akevav. It's talking about the very light, quote-unquote, mitzvahs that a person tramples by his heels, that person tramples underfoot. It's considered light in their mind, and therefore they don't treat it well. Ulefiza, and according to this meaning, what's the pasuk trying to tell you? V'haya Eikev Tishmun, meaning Hainu, im ha-mitzvahs kalas chulu, if the easy and light mitzvahs, then top of the second column, Tishmun, you will listen. Azay yavi aschar, so then the reward comes about. V'shamar Hashem v'goymer, Hashem will guard you. Yishmer l'cha avtachasei, He will guard, He will observe His promise to you to keep, to do whatever He promised you. So the Rebbe's approach is always that when you have different explanations in one topic, and especially in the same word, they must have a connection. They cannot be at a complete disconnect one from the other. Since the two explanations of the word Eikev, Eikev meaning the end of days when Moshiach comes, and Eikev meaning the mitzvahs that a person fulfills, even though people trample it underfoot, under a heel. V'yiseinim is even more so, but it's in the same word. Moving, it's understood. She'eshayich has been named that there's a connection between the two different meanings, since they're in the same word, the same pasuk in Medubar come upon, like the Rebbe speaks about it many places, many times. According to this, it's not understood concerning the two explanations in the word Eikev. Not only do they not have a connection and association between them, they are opposites. According to the second explanation, what does Eikev mean? It means mitzvahs. Skip the brackets. 5 lines lower, as opposed to the first explanation, it's referring to the reward for the mitzvahs at the end of the days. These are two opposite things. The mitzvah is what you do, the schar, the reward, is what you receive. They're completely different and distinct. The Rebbe adds even more so that we know that they're so distinct, they're really separated and indicated in different time periods. Yes, at Al-Kain, even more so the Rebbe says, Pasuk Echad Lifneza, in a certain Pasuk prior to this, Besoif Parshas Veschanon, one Pasuk prior to all of this, at the end of Parshas Veschanon, Ksiv Hayoim La'asoisim. It says, today to be done. What's the emphasis today to be done? I'm giving you the mitzvahs to do them. What's the emphasis on the word hayoim? Rashi mefarish. So Rashi explains, you know why it says hayoim la'asoisam? To indicate that today is the time of doing. On the morrow, meaning yesh machar achar zman, Rashi says there's a tomorrow that could be after time. In the world to come, that's when you're going to see reward. So what do we see from it? That the mitzvahs and the reward for the mitzvahs are really so distinct, they have two separate times of when it occurs. This means the fulfillment of mitzvahs today, and the reward of the mitzvahs tomorrow. They are matters that are connected in two distinct times. The pasuk immediately after the pasuk Hayom La'asoisam, v'haya Eikev Tishmon, all of a sudden he mixes them together. Boim Shnei Pirushim V'Inyanim comes both explanations and both topics. Hayom La'asoisam Alamachal Kabel Schorim. The idea today to do it and tomorrow to receive the reward. Ba'oisa Teva Eikev. They both are combined in the same word, which means Eikev. Vatas, that this expresses hein es inyan hamitzvos, kepirish aleph. Both the idea of mitzvahs, like the first explanation, the hein es inyan hein. Obviously, it's a misprint over here. Hein es inyan haschara mitzvahs kepirish abeis, and both the idea of the reward for the mitzvahs, like it's in the second explanation. So the Rebbe says, to be able to understand this, we have to understand the general idea of reward in the mitzvahs. This will be understood by prefacing a question concerning the general idea of the reward of the mitzvahs. Pratis of Parshas Eikev about the reward of the mitzvahs is spoken about at length, and specifically in our parsha, in Parshas Eikev, it speaks about the reward of the mitzvahs. The Rebbe says it's a very important thing. When you talk about a reward, you talk about a salary, it has to be commensurate and even more than the work you are doing. Schar amiti, a true reward, tzarech liyis lo erech la'avoida sheba'avura meshalmes haschar. It has to be commensurate to the avoida, that for which you are paying this salary, this reward. And the truth is, v'ad shaschar tzarech liyis yoiser masher erech hishtadlos v'avoidas hapoyel ba'atzmai. It has to be even more so than the value of the effort and the work of the worker himself. And the Rebbe says at great length over here in the brackets that when a worker works, he's relying on his employer to pay him not just enough to be able, that the person himself should be able to live, but he's relying on his employer to pay him enough to be able to support his entire household. And especially a Yid, that the Chazal say that a Yid, as much as an employer pays him, it's never enough. Even if he gives him a meal like Shlomo HaMelech used to be able to do in his days, you did not fulfill your full obligation, because they are children of Avraham, Yitzchak, Eikev. So therefore, the rule about a reward, the rule about a salary is, it is much more than the actual labor. Now let's examine the idea of mitzvahs. Can we say such a thing by mitzvahs? Third paragraph in the Ois, last paragraph on this first column. According to this, a question arises. Any type of reward, whether it's a material reward or a spiritual reward, including what's foretold in our parsha and in other parshas in the Torah. It's incomparable to the actual fulfillment of Torah and its mitzvahs, which we know from Tanya and many other places, that the Torah and its mitzvahs is it's Hashem's wisdom, it's Hashem's will, and Chassidus explains, just like Hashem is infinite, so too His wisdom and His will is infinite. And the great pleasure and delight that it brings before me, Hashem says. This brings about, like the Chazal say in the Mishnayos, in Pirkei Avos, of this Perek, of this Shabbos, which is chapter 4, it is more beautiful, tshuva and good deeds in this world, mikol chayei abad, in the entire life of the world to come. This means even 1 hour of tshuva and good deeds is greater and more beautiful than the entire life of the world to come. Well, we're not talking about just 1 hour, many hours and much tshuva and good deeds. Nimtza comes out that Hashem is not paying us a commensurate wage. Through the reward that Hashem gives the Yidden, even the reward of the world to come, I am giving you its reward at the end, in the heel. Tomorrow they're going to receive the reward. The reward of the Yudim Gashrim Ba'olam, the schar Yudim Gashrim Ba'olam Hazeh, the reward of what's foretold to get physical, material goodness in this world, they do not, or they're not the full salary and earnings for the fulfillment, for the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Because the reward does not even touch the wondrous and awesome and powerful level of the fulfillment of the mitzvahs of Hashem. What type of thing can be considered a reward that could be a repayment for the sake of a mitzvah? He says, in many places it's explained, according to the statement of the Mishnah in the Pirkei Avos of this Shabbos, which we say the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. Based on that statement, we could explain what type of reward can be commensurate to our avodah of mitzvahs. What does it mean, schar mitzvah? Mitzvah, when Moshiach comes, it will become revealed to us the great delight that was before me, that Hashem says, the will and the delight that Hashem has in the mitzvahs, that we caused that delight by Hashem. So that's what it means, the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. We're going to partake of that pleasure. We're going to have a revelation of that pleasure. And therefore, this is the true and only possible reward for the fulfillment of mitzvahs. And that's why it makes sense. True, physical reward is not possible, even just plain spiritual reward. But over here, we're talking about the ultimate level, the level of experiencing the same delight that Hashem has when I do a mitzvah. We will experience that delight. So that's the reward of the mitzvah itself. We will receive and we will experience Hashem's enjoyment in the mitzvah. So the Rebbe says, this still doesn't help entirely to explain the question we had. But this explanation is not completely sufficient, or is completely insufficient in our situation. Ki, last paragraph on the page, Aleph, Gilui hanachas ruach lemekayim ha-mitzvah einoi toikev ve'etzem hanachas ruach shenifel adekiyum ha-mitzvah ba'poyel ba'olam hazeh. Revealing the delight and having the delight is two separate things. When we do a mitzvah, so we cause Hashem a great delight. As he says, Nachas Ruach Lefanai Shemartu Nas L'Tzoyni, it's a great delight before me that I said my will was fulfilled. The fact that I become aware of Hashem's delight, which we are not aware of now, we're going to become aware of that when Moshiach comes. Our awareness of Hashem's delight is not identical to the actual experiencing of the delight. So again, the delight that we are causing, the mitzvah that we are doing, is seemingly so much greater than the reward that we are receiving, which is just the awareness of that delight of Hashem. Beis, let's skip over the parentheses to Beis. The majority of those things that are foretold in our parsha. And similarly, also in other places in the Torah where it talks about reward and so on, like in etc. They do not discuss at all, even not in a manner that would hint at the revelation of the delight of Hashem. Ella al broches v'amshoches lebnei Yisrael b'inyanei magashmi. What does it talk about? All the brachas and all that which comes down from Hashem to Yidden in their physical matters. Hashem will observe and guard to you the promise and the kindness. He will bless you and increase you. He will give blessing to your children and the fruits of your land. You will be blessed from all the nations. You will not have a barren man or a barren woman. Hashem will remove from you all illness, etc. In a similar vein, in the following psukim, it's all about physical good. So what are you telling me that how is the reward commensurate to the mitzvah, because we're talking about having Hashem's delight being revealed to us? Nowhere does the Torah talk about the delight of Hashem. Nowhere in the Torah hints in the parshas that speak about the reward, does it even hint at the delight Hashem has in the mitzvah. Therefore, the Rebbe is going to give a different insight into the idea of schar mitzvah, and based on that different insight, we will understand how it is commensurate to the mitzvah itself, the reward that we're going to get. We could say the explanation on this, according to the above mentioned mission about the reward of a mitzvah, is a mitzvah itself. The true reward for a mitzvah is ha-mitzvah atzma, the mitzvah itself. Anything else that's not a mitzvah is, like we said, are completely incomparable. Like we said before, a mitzvah is Hashem's will and wisdom, those are infinite. What can be compared? let alone physical things, even spiritual things. What can be compared to Hashem's will and wisdom that's a mitzvah? Einam shleimus aschar al kima mitzvah kanal. These would not be anything else. That's not part of the mitzvah, could not be the complete reward for the fulfillment of a mitzvah, like we said before. Because what does a mitzvah do? Shemakasheres oisei makadosh baruch hu, a mitzvah binds a yid with Hashem. Mitzvah malashon tzafsa v'chibur, like the Rebbe always brings down, that mitzvahs and the word togetherness and joining. Ubefrat lepirush noisav b'zeh, and especially according to another meaning in what we say in Pirkei Avos, that's schar mitzvah mitzvah. What is the reward of a mitzvah? Is a mitzvah mean hainu schar ha mitzvah hu shehi mevia sa'adam mekayim ha mitzvah l'kayim oid mitzvah. What is the reward of the mitzvah? The idea that we always say mitzvah gereres mitzvah. We know one mitzvah draws another mitzvah in its wake. So therefore, the reward of the mitzvah is that it's going to bring the person to fulfill another mitzvah. That's the reward of the mitzvah. And not just one mitzvah. V'ad l'ribui mitzvahs. That the reward of the mitzvah is that it brings the person to do many mitzvahs. Not just one more mitzvah. So then he says further, noisef alzeh, and all of this that brings to doing one more mitzvah or multiple mitzvahs is noisef alzeh. This is additional to the fact sha'idei zeh mekayim as ha mitzvah atzma ba'ofen nailo mushlam yoser, top of the second column. Through this, he fulfills the mitzvah in a more elevated and perfect state. What's it mean to perform the mitzvah in a greater state? But they suffer hidur, that the person adds in taking more care in the mitzvah, but they suffer simcha v'cholu, by doing it in more joy. So in other words, by doing a mitzvah once, that will bring him to fulfill this mitzvah again in a more joyous manner, in a more hidur-dike mitzvah type of manner. This is similar, as I mentioned before, to the idea that we say that one mitzvah pulls and draws another mitzvah in its wake, like the Mishnah says, or before that, the very characteristic of a mitzvah on its own is that it makes him to fulfill more mitzvahs. Ad l'ribui mitzvahs, until multiple mitzvahs. Ad soif kol ha-mitzvahs, till the ultimate, and just doing all the mitzvahs. The Rebbe also in a footnote in 19 brings that since all mitzvahs are intermingled one with the other, that every mitzvah includes in it all other mitzvahs, so therefore that will bring him to fulfill all the other mitzvahs, because it has that interconnectedness. So the Rebbe goes on to say, if that is that way, that the mitzvah geureris mitzvah al achas kama v'kama, third paragraph in the second column, how much more so? Schar mitzvah, the reward for the mitzvah. Shakadosh Baruch Hu noisim ba'ad mitzvah, that Hashem gives for the sake of a mitzvah. Shemevi oid mitzvah, that Hashem gives the person the reward that he's going to have another mitzvah. And not just he can have another mitzvah, but oid ribui mitzvahs, that Hashem gives him the reward that he's going to have multiple mitzvahs, many mitzvahs, because of this mitzvah that he did. Koilol gam ilui be'inyan ha-mitzvah atzma, including also an elevated state in this mitzvah itself, that it's kiyum ratzon Hashem, that's fulfilling the will of Hashem. Hein bekamus, both in quantity, that he's going to have yoser mitzvahs, he's going to have more mitzvahs, like we said before. Ve'hein be'echas, also it's going to qualitatively increase his mitzvah. Oifen naila yoser ba mitzvah, it's going to be in a more elevated performance of the mitzvah. Koilol gam sha mitzvah rashoinish b'vavur mekalmas haschar. This also includes that the first mitzvah, that for its sake we receive the reward, the anasis b'tesafes shleimus kana'al, will be done in an ultimate perfect state. So now, based on this concept, we can connect this with all the material good that the Torah promises us for doing mitzvahs. We could say, this is also the content of the reward of the mitzvah. The way it's about those material things that have been foretold in the Torah, including also in our parsha. That Hashem will remove from him all matters that stand in the way of doing it, meaning the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe is quoting now the Rambam. Hashem will remove chayli, illness, milchama, and war, v'ra, and famine, and similar to that, because these can all interfere with our doing the mitzvahs in the best way possible. And the flip side of it is, he will give us all the best opportunities. He will give to us all the good and benefits that support our hands, to do and to fulfill the Torah, like peace and satiation, that we have enough food, and much money and gold, so that we shouldn't be involved all of our days in matters that the body needs. If a person has to run after their bodily needs, they need to go to work, they need to take care of other things, they need to prevent themselves from illness, so that robs them of precious time that they could be involved in Torah mitzvahs. But rather, the mitzvahs that we do are going to earn us the reward that we won't have to worry about our physical needs. We will sit free to study Torah and to do mitzvahs. This whole quote was from the Rambam in the Laws of Tshuva. The Rebbe concludes from this. This means to say, the reward of mitzvahs of the physical promises is not for the material, physical benefit that's in the physical promises that Hashem promised us. Like we said before, this does not have erech biyachas lamitzvah. It has no comparison, no value, the physical benefits in regards to the mitzvah. But rather, what is the purpose of this? It gives us the capability, shamenucha, the rest, menuchas han gufa, menuchas han nefesh, the rest of the body and the rest of the soul, that the soul is calm. It comes as a result and an outcome of our physical promises that Hashem promised us. It gives us the opportunity to study Torah and fulfill mitzvahs. Like the Rambam says. In a way of increasing in a so much more powerful way, both quantitatively and qualitatively. That is even the reward that Hashem gives before Moshiach comes. How much more so concerning the reward of the days of Moshiach and the world to come. The Rambam says that this is the end of the reward of mitzvahs, because in Gan Eden the neshama receives reward even now, but the end and the last stop in the reward, that is when Mashiach comes. The reward that Hashem gives in the heel, and we said the first meaning of the word heel is the end of days. When there will be the ultimate perfection of comfort and rest by the Eden. There won't be any famine and no war, no jealousy, no competition. Good will be given much, and all tasty things will be as available as dust. For this reason, Nis'avu kol Yisrael nevi'em chachmeim l'mois Mashiach. All the Yidden, their prophets and their sages desire the days of Mashiach. Why? Not for the physical benefit itself, but kedei sheyanuchum mimamalchios she'enam manichsum las b'toyrim mitzvos kohen chulu. So they should get relief from all those governments that don't allow them to be involved in Torah mitzvahs appropriately. It's not a time for them to eat and drink and make merry, but rather to be free in Torah and its wisdom. The Rebbe concludes in the days of Moshiach, there will be the completion and perfection of the reward of a mitzvah as a mitzvah. The Rebbe says in the footnote, because we know schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka, that at present in this world, before Moshiach comes, there is no reward of the mitzvah. It's only like extra fruits or whatever. The actual reward, that is when Mashiach is going to come. And that's lo schar study. It's not a side reward. So for example, you work for somebody. You whatever you do, you build houses for somebody. And that somebody pays you money. Money and houses are two separate things. So he's giving you a side thing for your activity of building houses. That's not the way it works by Hashem's rewarding us for Torah mitzvahs. The reward that we will experience is directly part of the mitzvah. It'll be a reward and the perfection of the mitzvah itself. Hakiyum, the Torah mitzvahs bezman hazeh, it's actually part of the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs in this day and age. And the Rebbe brings in footnote 31 that this is what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya chapter 36, that the entire purpose and goal of the creation of the world is to have the mitzvahs be in its most perfect state that we are going to fulfill when Mashiach comes. So the Mashiach's times of the Torah mitzvahs, that reward is the ultimate fulfillment of Torah mitzvah. So therefore, that's what it means, schar mitzvah mitzvah. So he says, Azai, top of the second column, to toisef shleimus ubekamus ubeeches bekiyam mitzvahs, then it will be added perfection, both in the quantity and in the quality of fulfillment of the mitzvahs. V'sham nasa lefarnecha kemitzvahs utzenecha. There, meaning when Mashiach comes, we will do before you the mitzvahs as it is your will, meaning the way Hashem wants the mitzvahs to be done in its most perfect state, because of the limitations that we are now in the time of Geulah, or the limitations before Mashiach comes, we cannot truly fulfill the mitzvahs as it is your will, Hashem's will. When will we truly be able to fulfill the mitzvahs where it's Hashem's will? That's Mashiach's time. The main idea of doing it today and the ultimate perfection of the actions of the mitzvahs will be when Mashiach comes, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. And the Rebbe also adds in a footnote that first of all, there's a famous question about the idea of mitzvahs betelus la'asid lavoi. It says there's an expression that mitzvahs will cease when Mashiach comes. So how can you tell me that the mitzvahs are going to be their most perfect fulfillment of mitzvahs when Mashiach comes, if the Chazal say that it's going to be bottle? And this is seemingly, it says in Tanya later on in the Geras HaKodesh, it's talking about during the times of Tchias HaMesim. So first of all, the Rebbe says that there are different views. There's a machlokes about it, about when exactly is the period when mitzvahs are going to cease. Is it during the time of the resurrection of the dead, or it's going to be a much later time? And even according to what it says in Tanya itself, that seems to adopt the view that the mitzvahs are going to cease when there's going to be Tchias HaMesim, so it doesn't mean literally it's going to be bottle, it's going to be ceasing. But rather, the mitzvahs of the present time will be so insignificant and so bottle, like a candle is bottle in the sunlight. A candle has no significance in the sunlight, so the mitzvahs we are performing at present is insignificant and incomparable to the mitzvahs that we're going to do when Moshiach comes. But it doesn't mean that Chas v'Shalom we're going to stop keeping Shabbos, or we're going to stop eating kosher, etc., etc. We're going to do it, but it's going to be of such a unbelievable way and so perfect and so beyond anything that we are called, the mitzvahs now are considered betelis. One more paragraph in the next page where he concludes, I'm sorry, I moved to the wrong page, where he concludes the answer to this question. Top of the page. And Eikev achres hayom mitzvahs atzmon. Based on this, we can explain the connection between the two explanations in the word Eikev. Eikev is referring to the reward of the mitzvahs, and which is done in the end of days, and the connection with the mitzvahs themselves. Why? Because this is the mitzvahs itself. Shleimus chara mitzvahs wa mitzvahs atzmon. The perfection and the completion of the reward of the mitzvahs is the mitzvahs themselves. V'zeu apirush bevahoya Eikev tishmun. That's what it means. It will be when you will hear, when you will listen in the Eikev. Meaning, hainu, the noise mitzvahs, in addition to what the simple meaning is, that through fulfilling mitzvahs you receive reward. The reward is in the heel itself. That Hashem will observe and guard for you the promise and all the different things that are foretold in our parsha. It expressed itself in increasing in the fulfillment of the mitzvahs. Eikev mitzvahs. Yoiser hamishpatim ha'elu shmartim v'asisem moisam. In the Eikev, in its explanation of mitzvahs, it means even more so of these laws that you will do them. That's what it means, that you will increase and you will have the reward of the mitzvah, which is the mitzvah itself, and that will occur when Moshiach comes at the end of days.